I am staring at something that should terrify every American, regardless of how you voted. And I don't say that lightly. Yesterday, I watched a police chief in Minnesota do something I never thought I'd see. He stood in front of cameras with a group of fellow chiefs, and he didn't defend federal agents. He warned the public about them, about how they've been operating on American streets, against American citizens. Let me be clear about what I'm going to show you in the next 20 minutes. This is my analysis. I could be wrong about some of this, but I've spent days going through the evidence, reading thousands of comments, watching the footage, and what I'm seeing keeps me up at night. Because I think we've crossed a line we can to uncross. Here's what nobody's connecting yet. And by the end of this, you're going to understand why I believe this isn't just about immigration enforcement anymore. The police chief's name is Mark Rye, Brooklyn Park, Minnesota, and the first thing he said should have made national headlines. Quote, "What you want to hear from any of us today is rhetoric of abolish ICE or that there shouldn't be immigration enforcement. The truth is, immigration enforcement is necessary for our national security and for local security." You caught that, right? He's not some left-wing activist. He is a police chief saying immigration enforcement matters. But then he said something that made my blood run cold. Recently, as the last 2 weeks, we as law enforcement community have been receiving endless complaints about civil rights violations in our streets from U.S. citizens. U.S. citizens, not immigrants, not people here illegally. American citizens being stopped on the street with no cause and forced to prove they are here legally, in America, in 2025. And here is the detail that makes this even more disturbing. When I say endless complaints, I'm not exaggerating his words. That is what he said. Endless. From a police chief who works with federal agents regularly, who has a long history, in his words, of working exceptionally well with ICE in the past. So what changed? I'm going to tell you what changed. But first, you need to understand something about quotas, because this is where the whole thing starts to make a sick kind of sense. The Wall Street Journal reported something that should be a massive scandal. There are incentives for ICE agents to meet a 3,000 people a day quota. 3,000 every single day. And here's the part that made me want to throw my phone across the room. They're getting rewarded even if they bring in people who then get released. Read that again. They get rewarded for bringing people in, not for deporting criminals, not for making communities safer, for hitting a number. You know what that reminds me of? And I'm not trying to be inflammatory here. I am genuinely asking, when in history has quota-based enforcement targeting specific groups of people ever ended well? Now, I can already hear some of you saying I am being dramatic, that I am overreacting, that these are just immigration sweeps, and if people have nothing to hide, they have nothing to worry about. So let me tell you about some specific cases that make that argument fall apart. A U.S. veteran on a Carnival cruise with his wife, taken out of his cabin, someone who served this country, arrested, a woman named Renee Good, driving her car, shot in the head by an ICE agent, not once, not twice, 3 times. Then that agent called her an effing B. She died. And when someone asked Caroline Leavitt, the White House press secretary, how that equates to ICE doing everything correctly, you know what happened? Leavitt called the reporter a biased left-wing hack, not for asking a hard question, for asking any question at all about a dead American woman. And here's what really gets me. Trump himself at his rallies said ICE agents are going to make mistakes sometimes, that they are dealing with rough people, that they might be too rough with somebody. Quote, "It can happen. We feel terribly. A lesbian mother of 3 is a rough person now. A diabetic woman trying to drive away is someone who deserves to be shot in the face." But wait, because this is where it gets even more disturbing. Police Chief Rye said something else that I can to stop thinking about. He said they started hearing the same complaints from their own officers, off-duty police officers, being stopped, being forced to show papers. And then he said this, and I want you to really hear this. Every one of these individuals is a person of color who has had this happen to them. Every single one. He continued, this isn't just important because it happened to off-duty police officers, but what it did do is we know that our officers know what the Constitution is, they know what right and wrong is, and they know when people are being targeted and that's what they were. So now we have trained law enforcement officers, people who understand the law, saying they were racially profiled by federal agents in America. And Chief Rye said something that should haunt everyone. If it is happening to our officers, it pains me to think of how many of our community members are falling victim to this every day. How many, I don't know. Nobody knows, because there's no accountability, no oversight, just masked agents with quotas pulling people out of cars and leaving the vehicles in drive so they roll down hills, pepper spraying people, separating families, leaving pets locked in cars. Now, I want to be fair here. I want to present the strongest case for why someone might support this, because I've read thousands of comments, and about 30% of them are saying some version of, if you are here illegally, you should be afraid. This is what enforcement looks like. We need to secure our borders. And look, I understand that sentiment. I do. Border security matters. Illegal immigration is a real issue. I am not some open borders absolutist who thinks we shouldn't have immigration laws, but here's where I think that argument completely breaks down. This isn't about border security. This is happening in Minnesota, in the interior of the country, to American citizens, to veterans, to off-duty police officers, to people who are here legally but happen to have brown skin. And the quota system proves it's not about finding actual criminals. It is about hitting numbers, any numbers. When I read through the comments on this story, I found something really interesting. About 62% expressed some level of concern or outrage, but here's what surprised me. Even among people who generally support tough immigration enforcement, a significant portion were troubled by the Renee Good shooting. 53% think that agents should be criminally charged. 53%. In a polarized country where we can agree on anything, more than half of people who saw that video think it was murder. And then Fox News, of all places, started to crack. Jessica Tarlov, God bless her, went on Fox and broke down the numbers. 82% of people saw that video. The Wall Street Journal confirmed the quota incentives. Americans being detained and asked to show their papers. And she said something that I think captures the core issue. I don't even know how many mistakes a day ICE is making in pursuit of Stephen Miller's $3,000 a day quota and getting paid for it. Getting paid for it? Even Joe Rogan, who has been pretty supportive of a lot of Trump-esque policies, watched that footage and said, quote, "It is very ugly to watch someone shoot a U.S. citizen, especially a woman, in the face. When you've lost Fox News hosts and Joe Rogan on a law enforcement issue, you've got a problem. But here's what terrifies me most, and this is where I might lose some of you, but I need to say it anyway. I think this is a test. I don't mean that in some grand conspiracy way. I mean that when you create a force of agents with quotas, minimal training, no accountability, and you tell them to be rough with people, you are testing how far you can push before Americans push back. And so far, we're not pushing back hard enough. The Minneapolis police chief, Brian O'Hara, gave a long interview to the New York Times. He is someone who worked with ICE his entire career. New York, New Jersey, no problem with immigration enforcement done correctly, but he described what's happening in Minneapolis as creating absolute havoc, pulling people out of cars and just leaving the cars, sometimes still in drive, leaving pets inside, pepper spraying people without cause. And someone who talks about the fact that he worked with ICE his whole career and wants them to do it the right way. The right way. That phrase keeps coming up. From police chiefs, from commenters, from Fox News hosts, everyone agrees we need immigration enforcement. But this isn't it. So what is this? I am going to tell you what I think this is, and you can decide if I am seeing patterns that aren't there. I believe this is the normalization of a domestic force that operates outside normal law enforcement constraints. They wear whatever they want. Jeans, running shoes, various outfits. They drive pickup trucks. They wear masks to hide their identities. They don't to coordinate with local police. They don't to give warnings about operations. They have quotas to hit and bonuses to earn. And they retargeting people based on how they look. That's not immigration enforcement. That's a paramilitary force engaging in racial profiling with legal immunity. Now, am I saying Trump is deliberately creating a secret police force? I don't know. Maybe it's just chaos and incompetence. Maybe it's Stephen Miller's obsession with hitting numbers. Maybe it's untrained agents with too much power and not enough oversight making terrible decisions. But here's what I do know. The mechanism doesn't matter as much as the result. The result is that American citizens are being stopped on the street and forced to prove their citizenship based on their skin color. The result is that a woman is dead. The result is that local law enforcement is warning the public about federal agents instead of working with them. And the result is that we re-normalizing it. Because think about what happens next. If this continues through the midterms, if Americans get used to seeing masked agents demanding papers on the street, if we accept that quotas and bonuses justify civil rights violations, what's the next step? I keep thinking about something Chief Rye said. According to reports on the ground, metro area leaders say that they've seen a pattern of federal agents accosting people and demanding proof of citizenship, and that the stops they have reported have overwhelmingly involved people of color. Overwhelmingly, not occasionally, not sometimes. Overwhelmingly. That's not a bug, that's a feature. And when Caroline Leavitt was confronted about 32 people dying in ICE custody last year, about 170 U.S. citizens being detained, about Renee Good being shot in the head and killed, she didn't express concern. She didn't promise investigation. She attacked the reporter for asking, called them biased, called them a left-wing hack, said they shouldn't even be sitting in that seat for asking about a dead American woman. That response tells you everything you need to know about accountability. There isn't any. Now, some of you are thinking, okay, but what is the solution? We can just have open borders. We can just let anyone come in. And you are right, we can but that's not what anyone is asking for. Here's what needs to happen, and I am being very specific here because vague calls for reform don't mean anything. First, the training threshold has to go back to what it was. 3 to 5 months, not 47 days. You cannot train someone to handle complex law enforcement situations, to understand constitutional rights, to make life and death decisions in 7 weeks. It's insane. Second, the people being detained have to have actual criminal convictions, and it must be the majority of them. Not just hitting quota numbers. Tom Holman claims they redoing this. The evidence directly contradicts that claim. Third, Americans cannot be detained or asked for their papers without probable cause. Period. We do not run a country where you can be stopped on the street and forced to prove your citizenship because of how you look. That is not America. Fourth, ICE must engage in de-escalation tactics. The Minneapolis police chief talked about how the way ICE is doing business creates havoc. Cars rolling down hills, pets abandoned, people pepper sprayed. That is not professional law enforcement, that is thuggery. And fifth, ICE agents must display identification. I understand wanting face guards in Minneapolis in winter. It is freezing. But we need to know who these people are. We need accountability. None of these demands are radical. They are basic requirements for professional law enforcement in a constitutional democracy. But here's what I think is really happening, and this is the part that keeps me up at night. I think the cruelty is the point. Not because Trump is some evil genius, but because the chaos serves a purpose. It keeps people afraid. It keeps communities divided. It gives his base someone to blame. And it tests how far he can push before institutions push back. And so far, the only institutions pushing back are local police departments who are watching their own officers get profiled. Whereas Congress, where are the oversight hearings? Where are the demands for accountability? I'll tell you where they are. They re-silent because they afraid of being called soft on immigration, afraid of losing their seats, afraid of Trump-esque base. So American citizens keep getting stopped, keep getting detained, keep getting shot. And we keep normalizing it. You know what is crazy about this? About 40% of the comments I read are from people saying some version of, this is what Nazis did. Show me your papers. This is how it starts. And about 30% are saying, stop being dramatic. This is just immigration enforcement. You are overreacting. But here's the thing. The people saying this is how it starts aren't talking about the end point. They're talking about the beginning, the normalization, the acceptance, the moment when we stop being shocked, and I think we're already there. When a White House press secretary can call a reporter a hack for asking about a dead woman and face no consequences, we are there. When ICE agents can shoot an American citizen 3 times in the head, call her an effing bee, and the apparatus of the federal government protects him, we are there. When police chiefs have to hold press conferences warning the public about federal agents instead of working with them, we are there. Now, maybe I am wrong about this. Maybe this is just a chaotic rollout of legitimate immigration enforcement that will get better with time. Maybe the training will improve. Maybe the quotas will be dropped. Maybe accountability will be established. But based on what I am seeing, I don't think that where this is headed. I think it's going to get worse. Because what happens when you give people power without accountability, bonuses without oversight, quotas without quality control. And I think it's going to get worse because the midterms are coming and Trump needs to keep his base energized. And nothing energizes his base like the spectacle of enforcement. The tougher the better, the more dramatic the better. Even if it means American citizens get caught in the crossfire, even if it means a woman dies, even if it means we abandon the constitutional principles we claim to cherish. So here's what I'm asking you to do. And I know this is hard. I know some of you voted for Trump. I know some of you support border security. I know some of you think I am being hysterical, but I am asking you to look at the specific facts. An American woman is dead, shot 3 times in the head by an ICE agent. The agent called her an effing bee. He being protected by the federal government. American citizens, including veterans and off-duty police officers, are being stopped on the street based on their skin color and forced to prove their citizenship. ICE agents are being incentivized to hit quota numbers regardless of whether the people they detain are actually here illegally or are actual criminals. Local police chiefs are warning the public about federal agents instead of working with them. And the White House response is to attack anyone who asks questions. Those are facts, not opinions, not partisan spin, facts. And if those facts, Dante, concern you, I need you to ask yourself why. Is it because you trust Trump? Fine. But do you trust every single ICE agent operating with minimal training and maximum quotas? Is it because you think this is only happening to people here illegally? The evidence proves that false. American citizens are being targeted. Is it because you think strong enforcement requires some collateral damage? Then say that out loud. Say I'm okay with American citizens being detained and killed if it means we deport more people, and see how that sounds. I am not trying to shame you. I am trying to wake you up, because this isn't about immigration anymore. This is about power. This is about what kind of law enforcement we are willing to accept on American streets. And right now we are accepting agents in masks with quotas targeting people based on skin color with no accountability when they kill someone. If that's the America you want to live in, okay. But I don't think it is. I think most Americans, regardless of party, regardless of how they feel about immigration, do not want federal agents stopping citizens on the street demanding papers. I think most Americans do not want quota systems that incentivize arrests over accuracy. I think most Americans do not want a woman shot in the head and the government's response to be attacking the people asking why. But if I am right about that, then we need to act like it. Call your representatives. Demand oversight hearings. Demand accountability for Jonathan Ross, the agent who killed Renee Good. Demand an end to quota systems. Demand proper training. Demand that ICE agents display identification and coordinate with local law enforcement. Share this video, share the stories, share the police chief's warning, share Renee Good's story. Make it impossible to ignore. And if you in Minnesota, if you in any city where ICE is operating this way, document everything. Film everything legal and safe to film. Create a record. Because the only thing that stops this kind of abuse is sunlight. I am going to end with something Chief Rye said because I think it captures everything. If it is happening to our officers, it pains me to think of how many of our community members are falling victim to this every day. It has to stop. It has to stop. Not because you are liberal or conservative, not because you support or oppose Trump, not because you have a position on immigration. Because we Americans, and Americans don't accept federal agents in masks stopping citizens on the street based on skin color. Americans don't accept quota systems that prioritize numbers over rights. Americans don't accept killing a woman and calling her an effing bee and facing no consequences. At least we shouldn't. So the question is, will we, or will we normalize this too? Add it to the long list of things we were shocked by for a day and then accepted? I don't know the answer, but I know what I'm seeing, and I know it terrifies me. And if it doesn't terrify you yet, I think it should, because this is how it starts. Not with camps and trains, with quotas and badges and masks, with just following orders and they should be complied and mistakes happen. With shooting a woman 3 times and calling it enforcement, with stopping citizens and calling it security, with abandoning our principles and calling it strength. I could be wrong about where this ends. I hope I am, but I'm not wrong about where we are right now, and right now we are in danger. Not from immigrants, not from caravans, not from people seeking asylum, from our own government using law enforcement as a weapon against its own people. And if we don't stop it now while we still can, I don't know if we'll get another chance. Share this. Speak up. Demand accountability before it's too late. Because I think it might